Okay, we are continuing our series on holding anxiety together. And I want to share with you all the last time I felt the most anxious. And it happened about 3 months ago. And I woke up at 6:15 in the morning, when I typically do, and I woke up to a voice message from my mother. And I noticed that she called me around 5 minutes earlier. And so I listened to the voice message, and it was a voice message where it was in a tone where you don't want to hear your mother in. She was just completely shocked, surprised, and out of sorts. And she just said, "Hey, Tim, can you give me a call back?" And so it was left open-ended. So I immediately called her back. She didn't pick up. I then called my sister. She didn't pick up. And then I called my mom again. And before she said hello, I just heard my sister in the background, and she's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's performing CPR on my dad. And then I hear my mom's voice, and she said, "Hey, Tim, Dad's on the ground. Come on over." I get up at 6:15. I run downstairs. In the process, I wake up Masami. He's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Everything's going to be okay, but I think Mom's going to have to take you to school instead of Dad." I tell Megan that, "I'm sorry, can you take Masami to school?" She says, "Fine." I get in my car. I rush over. I dial 911 on the Bluetooth. The 911 said, the dispatcher said that ambulance and fire truck is already at my place. I finally get there. I run in, and at this time, my sister is no longer working on my dad. A medic is, and he's just sort of pumping away and trying his best to revive him. They start calling out different stages of, signs of death, essentially. And it gets to the point where the medic, there's one working on my father, and the other one is just on this tablet, I think maybe looking up. The tablet must be connected to some medical instruments. And he turns to my mom and says, "Do you want us to continue? Is there a DNR on file?" My mom, understandably so, is pretty shaken up. She hesitates, and then the medic again says, "Ma'am, I need an answer for you." My mom is still hesitating, and it's a huge decision. Then she turns to me and says, "Tim, should we stop or should we continue?" In that moment, I just felt this heat of anxiety, all in my body. And I just didn't know what to do. I typically don't experience a lot of anxiety, but it was just such a weighty decision. When I see people in therapy, when they present to me with anxiety, they say, "Hey, I want to come in to work on anxiety." It's actually not very helpful, because anxiety is such a general term. And so it's not specific. And a lot of times, if we can go to the next slide, above anxiety, there's nervousness, there's worrying, there's irritability, there's indecision, there's racing thoughts. And then even above this, then you have physical symptoms. You have the sweaty palms, heart palpitations. Sometimes you get GI difficulties. You have insomnia, or sometimes there's nausea. So when somebody presents with anxiety to therapy, it's not very helpful, actually. But as we work in treatment together, you try to do your best to have a more specific understanding what your anxiety looks like. And then from there, you develop a treatment plan. But what anxiety does have in common, all the symptoms of anxiety, is that it's all based in fear. And in that moment, when my mother turned to me and asked me, should we continue or not? Yes, it was anxiety, but looking back, I had so much fear. And I've always wanted to make my father proud, even as an adult, especially as a kid, but as an adult too. I didn't want to let him down. And I feared in that moment that I would do something that he would be disapproving of. In the Bible, we read of many characters who experience fear. And one of the characters I want to talk to you about today, his name is Moses. And specifically, he had a lot of fear when God called him back to Egypt. So if we can look in the next slide in Exodus 3, this is when God called him back and to return to Egypt. And let me give you some context here. Moses grew up in Egypt, and at this time, he recently murdered an Egyptian. So when he received the call from God, he was actually fleeing from Egypt, and he's now in Midian. So he's already in a state of heightened fear and probably a lot of heightened anxiety too. So this is God speaking. He says, "The cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Then what happens to this is Moses then responds with 4 statements that all express his deep-seated fear. So here's the first statement. So Moses responds, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God responds, "I will be with you, Moses." Moses then states a second statement of fear. "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" God responds, "The Lord said, 'What is that in your hand?' 'A staff,' Moses said. 'Throw it on the ground.' He threw it on the ground and became a snake. And he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, 'Reach out your hand and take it by the tail.' So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. 'This,' said the Lord, 'is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had appeared to you.'" Then Moses continues with the next statement of fear. "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." And God responds, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will speak and help you speak, and will teach you what to say." Moses, in his final statement of fear, says, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please just send somebody else." And God states, "What about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth, and I will help you both. I help both of you to speak, and will teach you what to do." So on this next slide, this is just a summary of what happens here. Over here is all of his statements, and here are possible theologians have talked about what those statements, his associated fear might be. So who am I that I should go? There's a fear of inadequacy. What if they do not believe me? Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being incapable. And God responds over and over with himself. He says, "I will be with you. Here's this staff. This is to communicate that others know that I am with you. I will help you speak." God sends Aaron. He says, "Aaron and I will help you when you speak." So Moses' fear was comforted by God's divine presence. Karl Barth, the theologian, he mentions that God does not give Moses information to master fear. God gives himself to be with Moses. Martin Luther states, "God does not say, 'You are capable,' but 'I am present.'" Faith rests not on who Moses is, but who God is with Moses. You see, in the height of Moses' fear, God reassures Moses with his divine presence, whether it's through himself, whether it's through the miracle of a staff, or whether it's through his brother Aaron. And we frequently observe this pattern in the Bible. And so we see the character of Hagar. If we can go to the next slide, please. Hagar was fearful of Sarah. Sarah was married to Abraham, if y'all recall the story, but Sarah was barren. And so Sarah asks her maidservant, Hagar, to sleep with Abraham so that they can have a kid. Hagar then becomes pregnant, but then Sarah becomes jealous of Hagar, the maidservant, and starts mistreating Hagar. And so Hagar becomes very fearful of Sarah's mistreatment. And what does God do? God sends an angel to comfort Hagar in her fear. We see the person of Jacob in the next slide, who is running away from Esau. Why is he running away in fear? Because he took Esau's birthright, and he's wondering if Esau is going to come after him in revenge. And what does God do? God shows up in a dream. As many of you know, Jacob's ladder. And it's a dream that reminds Jacob of God's covenant with Abraham, which provides comfort and reassurance to Jacob. We see if we go to the next slide, we see the individual of Elijah who's fearful of Jezebel. Elijah wanted to die, but during this time, God comforted him with an angel. If we go to the next slide, over and over again, we see a pattern. And the pattern is that God calms our fears through his divine presence, through an angel, through dreams, through the miracle of staff, through himself. This all sounds fine and good, Tim, but I've never seen an angel. This all sounds fine and good, Tim, but I've never heard an audible voice of God speak to me. I don't know what God's divine presence feels like. I understand that. In psychology, we have a term called internal working models. If we can go to the next slide. Internal working models is a mental picture of a trusted individual that surfaces in times of fear. Now, it's formed through consistent positive interactions with an individual, oftentimes a caregiver, a mom or a dad, and it creates a sense of trust and safety. It promotes self-assurance. It promotes that person to feel value, confidence, and a sense of worth. And they're often in full display on first days of school. So I see Nicole and Melissa over there in the back. Masami went to Therapy West where they work, and his first day of school occurred when he was about 2.5. And during his first days of school, what he would do with me is he would wrap his entire body around one leg. And so I would have to pull out his arms, pull his legs, and then hand him off to Melissa or Nicole, and then just sort of bolt out of there. And don't look back, right? You don't linger. Just start the car and go. But then you see him, and he's running to the playpen, and he's behind the playpen. He's just shaking it in tears. He's going like this, right? So it just beats at your heart. So we can go to the next slide. So in these times of fear and times of stress, you're hoping that in his heart, he can access these mental pictures of myself, his father, of his mother. And we hope that he can hear the words like, "You'll be okay, Mas. I'll never leave you. I'll always comfort you." When I felt that heat and that sensation of that fear run through my body, I could tell in my mom's posture that she knew the decision. And my sister was there, and then my mom was there, and we all knew that it was over. A part of me was shocked because it happened so fast. Another part of me felt that he was saying that it's okay. Those same words that I'll never leave you, I'll always comfort you. I'll always be on your mind. And since November, there hasn't been a day I haven't thought about him. He's just, he's everywhere. He was a dentist by trade, and so every time I brush my teeth, I think about him. He would say, "You gotta brush in a circle, 30 seconds on each side, 4 sides, 2 minutes total." And then he would say, you need to hang the toothbrush upside down, so you need gravity to work with you so that the water would be released from the bristles down into the sink so that the bristles wouldn't get as old. He would cut my hair, and so every time I comb my hair, I think about my father. And I felt a little guilty. I thought about my father so much because I didn't think about God as much as my father. And it made me think, oh my gosh, is my faith weak? Like, am I a weak Christian? Like, I never thought about somebody this much. Like, maybe since Megan. Like, when I first thought about Megan, when we first dated, I thought about her all the time. I still do, Megan. But not as much. But yeah, like, ever since November, like, my dad's everywhere. And to be honest with you, like, I don't think about God that much. But God has been reassuring me. He's been saying, thoughts about your father and thoughts about me, they're synonymous, like they're one and the same. I'm giving you these thoughts so that you can be comforted by me. I'm lost. Can you go to the next slide, please? So my question to you is, who is your divine presence? Whose image brings you comfort when you're fearful? Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's mom, dad. Maybe it's a spouse. When you're in the deepest forms of anxiety and fear, who comes to your mind? Maybe for some of you, it's your kids. I work with some older folks, and they say, when I'm most fearful, I actually think about my son and daughter. And there's such a beautiful, reciprocal process there, right? Like, as you raise your kids, you're teaching them to think about you when they're in fear. And then as you age, then you think about them. I think there's a beauty in that. And this past Monday, I don't know if you'll recall, but there was so much rain. We were supposed to go to an amusement park, but because of rain, we got rained out. So Masami and I, we decided to watch a movie, the movie Goat, which is an animated film by Steph Curry is one of the producers. And he was so excited. But this was the first movie that he's seen in theaters. And so he was so excited, and then when we get in there, the previews are on, and he just loses it. It's so dark, and we had these big Dolby surround sound. It's loud. And it wasn't a silent cry. It was a yell where he's kicking his feet, and all these heads just turn and look at us. And so we go out the theater. And long story short, he was able to sit through, and he overcame his fear. But it was I think a blessing for him because he enjoyed the movie. I think the bigger one the bigger blessing was it was me as a parent. Because as a parent that one of the greatest joys in life is to sit with your kid in fear, when they're in fear, and to help them to overcome their fears. This happens to us all the time as children of God. We are fearful, and yet we rob God of that blessing. We don't think of God. We don't think of trusted others in our fear, and we become frenzied. Sometimes we engage in breathing exercises, or we try to manipulate our thoughts, or sometimes we distract ourselves. Those are all fine and good strategies, but God is tapping us on the shoulder and saying, I'm here. I'm your Father. I want to comfort you. And I don't think it's a problem of absence. I think it's more of a problem of access. That is, these models, these images of trusted others of God, they're not absent, they're present in our minds. It's just that we have difficulty accessing them, that we don't take intentional thought of bringing them to mind. My encouragement to you is to think specifically just about one person when you're in fear, to imagine what that person would do. What would he or she say to comfort you? And when you're in fear, may you remember that God's divine presence can comfort you, and receive that comfort from the Lord. And in doing so, may you bless his heart. Let's pray.